It goes without saying that these are very volatile and uncertain times in our country. I've put out a number of communications to our staff members, but I still get asked a whole host of questions. So I thought what I'd do is make this short video to answer some of the more common questions that I've been asked. So there are a couple of rating agencies in the world, and you can really think of them as doing pretty deep analysis on a country and that country's ability to repay its debt. And effectively what a rating is a graduated scale of a country's ability to repay its debt. They've got some pretty complicated scales and they're all slightly different, but generally speaking, countries that are rated with lots of A's, AAA countries, are those countries that have very low levels of debt and very high levels of propensity to repay that debt, and then that scale graduates down through some B's and then gets down into a lower level of scaling. But without getting too complicated about all of these A's and B's, there are really two big buckets. There's a bucket called investment grade ratings and a bucket called non-investment grade ratings. And it's really important which bucket you fall into, because people who are investing in a country's debt, so if a country needs to raise money, it goes to investors. People who are investing in that debt look at these ratings to determine either if they're allowed to invest in that debt or at what price or what return they think they should earn for the risk. For a long time, rating agencies have been concerned about, firstly, the increasing level of debt in the South African government. Quite simply, every year the South African government collects less in taxes than it spends. So it has to go and borrow the difference, and that means our national debt goes upwards. So people have been concerned about that rising national debt. And over the last 5 or so years, it's gone from roughly 30% of GDP to about 50% of GDP. So a big increase in debt. And at the same time, our growth rates have slowed down. And when growth rates slow, people would be worried that that means that tax collections are going to slow. And if tax collections slow, that means it's harder to repay that growing level of debt. I think it certainly could have, and we've been working very closely with government for the last year on exactly that, because while debt levels have been going up, actually some green shoots have started to emerge in our economy, and most people think that growth rates in 2017 are still likely to remain low, but they will have been better than 2016. So actually the key reason that we got downgraded didn't really have to do with the economics of what's going on in South Africa. It was as a result of what's referred to as the changes in the executive branch. So that's all the cabinet changes that we saw last week. And the rating agencies saw that as putting growth at risk and putting the fiscal path at risk. So it was really President Zuma's cabinet choices that triggered the ratings downgrade. I think they are highly likely to, but there are slight nuances here. If you start with there are two other big rating agencies, Moody's and Fitch. And I'm going to start with Moody's because they've already made an announcement, and they said that they are going to postpone their rating of South Africa for about another 90 days. Now, Moody's at the moment are 2 notches above investment grade. So they'd have to go down 3 notches to put us into that same bottom bucket as Standard & Poor's. So I think that's relatively unlikely for them to do. They could well downgrade us. In fact, I'm sure they will, but not by 3 notches. So the real one to focus on would be Fitch, which is the third rating agency, because currently, if they move us down by 1 notch, they'll join Standard & Poor's. And I personally think it is very likely that they will do so. If you look at the actions of Fitch around the world, generally they would follow Standard & Poor's. And Standard & Poor's have already moved, so I think Fitch are likely to do so. Well, essentially, if your country's categorized in that bottom bucket, it means several international investors just simply won't be able to invest in us. Their rules of investment say they can't invest in sub-investment grade entities. And for those who can, they will want a higher return for what is now a higher risk. So that means that interest rates go up and the rand depreciates. Generally speaking, if interest rates go up and the rand depreciates, we know that the economy is likely to go slower and there's likely to be less job creation. So essentially what you get into is an environment of higher interest rates, higher inflation, and lower growth. And all of that is bad for confidence in our economy. So I think firstly, for any economy to grow, the basic ingredients are policy and government certainty. That promotes confidence, confidence promotes investment, and investment promotes growth. That's the path that pretty much any growth economy follows. So at the moment, we've got lots of uncertainty and a lack of confidence. So that means that that trajectory through that path is unlikely to play out, which means that, roughly speaking, most people expected our economy in 2017 to grow somewhere between 1 and 1.5%. And already people are saying, well, now maybe that's going to be somewhere closer to 0.5%. For the sector in total, what's important to understand is that banks are also rated by these same rating agencies, and it's a little bit complicated, but banks' ratings are what is called capped at the sovereign ceiling. Now, really, what does that mean? It means that banks can't be rated higher than the country. So actually, all of our ratings are equal to the country. We can't be above the country. But what that means is if the country goes down, we also go down. So what you'll expect to see play out here is that all of the banks in South Africa, all of the big four banks at least, will have their ratings cut as well. Now that's not good news for all of us because it means that at the margin our cost of borrowings will go up, but it's not dramatically important. This isn't an event like the global financial crisis. It's a much smaller event than that, and our big four banks in particular would be well prepared for it. At Nedbank, we were hoping the country didn't get downgraded, but the chances of that was certainly there. So we're well prepared, we're well capitalized, we're highly liquid, and we've done all of our stress testing to know that it's very easy for us to withstand this sort of event. But it does make it very difficult for us to grow. So this means that our future growth rates are likely to be lower than they otherwise would have been. I don't think it will change directly the manner that Nedbank does business. If we think about how we've played our strategy in the business and how our credit models work, we've been expecting a tough and difficult environment, and that's actually really what we've got. But I think what you'll see is that in this environment, it will be tougher for our clients. Our clients will be less likely to invest, and the retail customers will have less money in their back pockets. So as a consequence of that, I would expect that our ability to grow loans and our ability to grow new clients and transactional volumes, we'll still be able to do it, but it'll be much harder. So I think what you should say to our clients is that, firstly, from a Nedbank point of view, it's absolutely business as usual. We're a well-capitalized bank, we've got lots of liquidity, we're open for business, and there's no change in the operating environment of Nedbank. But certainly I think we should give our clients advice, as we will be doing in the wholesale side of our business and through our economic bulletins, to say that in the current environment they should expect that the economy will grow slower, that interest rates will be higher, and they should prepare their own personal finances for a tougher period ahead. I mean, if you really want to cut through all of this, in short, every individual is poorer today than they were prior to a downgrade. And why do I say that? Well, if inflation goes up, effectively that erodes your spending power. So individuals are poorer in a high inflation environment than a low inflation environment. Individuals, if you measure wealth around the world, it's measured in dollars. When the rand depreciates, everybody's wealth in dollar terms has also reduced. And then if you think about, where do other people store wealth? Those people who have it, their wealth is either stored in stock markets or bond markets. All of those have reduced, or in pension funds. And pension funds themselves are invested in stock markets and bond markets. So roughly in the last 10 days or so, what you'd have seen is that on average, stock markets, foreign exchange and bond markets have all fallen by somewhere between 10 and 15%. So that gives you a sort of a back of the cigarette box estimate as to how much wealth has been destroyed in this process. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, and I think what's essential for our country is, have we learnt from this mistake? And are we able to regroup as business, government and labour and work together to put in place an economy in our society that has higher levels of inclusive growth? And that is the only way that we can make sure that debt levels come down in society, is through higher levels of growth. And I certainly know from all of the other business leaders that I've spoken to, as critical as we have been about the actions of the president last week, we know that we have to work together to improve the economy in South Africa for the benefit of businesses, for the benefit of all South Africans, and for the benefit of individuals like all of you listening to me.